So, hello. We've been really contemplating where to go with these contemplations that we're doing. And I decided that we should go first to In the Mirror of Death, because our stepping out on the path really begins when we begin to recognize impermanence, where uh, Rinpoche said, "Learn to die, and thou shalt learn how to live. There shall none learn how to live that have not learned how to die." So they were written, these words were written in the medieval book of The Craft of Dying. So it's a time to think about um, understanding death and its relationship to life. If we can learn how to face death, we'll have learned the most important lesson of life, which is to face ourselves and to come to terms with ourselves in the deepest possible sense as human beings. I think all of us have this deep hidden fear of dying until at some point, perhaps you come to an awareness and an understanding of the nature of our true nature, our true being. Rinpoche used to say, if you're concerned about dying, if you're worried about dying, don't worry, you'll all die successfully. So it's sure we will all die, there's no problem. But what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of the unknown? Are we afraid of looking into and facing ourselves? The Tibetans really consider the moment of death to be a moment of truth. They say that death is like a mirror in which the true meaning of life is reflected. From a spiritual point of view, it is actually the possibility of transformation. And remembering impermanence keeps us from being lazy or forgetting all that we hope to accomplish. And one of the things contemplating on death does for us is it wakes us up to how precious life is and makes us realize we don't want to waste our time, it's just too precious. So perhaps we want to take a moment to contemplate this saying, this quote, "Death is a mirror in which the entire meaning of life is reflected." It's something we can carry with us every day to try and understand, what does that mean? Here's a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, from the foreword in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. He says, "Death is a natural part of life which we will surely have to face sooner or later. To my mind, there are two ways we can deal with it while we are alive. We can either choose to ignore it, or we can confront the prospect of our own death, and by thinking clearly about it, try to minimize the suffering that it can bring. So this is one aspect of impermanence. But another aspect comes when we begin to recognize that everything is impermanent. There is nothing that doesn't change. Except there is one thing, which is the nature of mind or the absolute. So the work we do in contemplations and meditation and mindfulness are all bringing us to an understanding of our true nature. And the good news is our true nature is unchanging and it is good. It's basic goodness. And if everything changes, then what is there to hold on to? Now, I personally can't really understand that if I'm afraid of everything changing. So when I was taught and shown this nature of mind, this true nature, there was such a release and relaxation in that, knowing that there was nothing else, that everything else had no inherent existence or meaning. But we also have to respect cause and effect because we do live in a relative world. So when things are difficult, when we are really grasping onto things, grasping onto hope and fear, wishing things wouldn't change or wishing things would change, being afraid of things that harm or things we think are harmful, pushing away unpleasant feelings and unpleasant thoughts, grasping onto the blissful moments, the desire. When we really contemplate impermanence and change, that grasping, that fear, and that attachment begin to loosen. And actually, the idea that everything changes, that everything's impermanent, brings a bit of hope, because when things are difficult, that it will change. You can say, this too shall pass. You can look at this in so many different ways. So Rinpoche said, trying to solidify everything, every experience, every feeling, every emotion. Like you want to freeze the moment, and the selfie culture is a good example of that. Basically, if you look at selfies, it's just a big head in the frame. It's a good example of what we always try to do, of freezing a certain moment. But When you try to do that, there's an immense hope and fear, and it keeps increasing. And when there's the immense indulgence to that hope, fear is not very far behind. So don't do that. Take it from me. Being wound up and tense and trying to freeze everything into a single moment where you demand to conform to your own wishes, it's very painful. It's a very painful thing to give yourself. So this too shall pass. And as you begin to accept that impermanence, you begin to take things a little bit less seriously, and it creates space and calm. And you could say one thing about mindfulness or meditation is it's about giving us ourselves space to let go and find peace. And so we are going to do more contemplations and more meditations just to continue down this path, this Buddhist path, which has a very specific direction to it. It's very helpful because the masters and teachers have gone before us, and they've fallen into the potholes, and they've shown us how to go around the potholes, which of course we don't always do because we are human. So, and we sometimes take ourselves so seriously, hard to relax and enjoy. So in relation to the body scan, or relation to this, let's just take a moment right now to simply relax. Let's be aware of our surroundings, aware of our body, aware of the sounds around you. Be aware of your breath as it moves in and out. And being aware, your breath is a really good example of impermanence, isn't it? You breathe in, and then you breathe out. You never breathe the same air twice, do you? Probably not. Be aware of here and now, this present moment, and allow yourself to rest right here, right now, without trying to do anything more. If you start to get lost by thinking about something in the past or in the future, as soon as you notice, then simply come back to this moment right now and rest. Because the truth is, you can't be in the past because it doesn't exist. It's already past. And you can't be in the future because it hasn't arrived yet. So the only place you can be is here, right now. Just rest. Now, let's finish this with the suggestion that you really look into this impermanence thing, this idea that death is the mirror in which really the meaning of our life is reflected. So perhaps you'll wander off and think about some other things, but take time to contemplate. And perhaps we need to give some instruction on contemplation, and we'll do that in the near future, perhaps in our next video. So have a great evening. I hope you find some space in your day, and space when obstacles arise, and space when you're grasping after happiness, and when you're having an aversion to fear and suffering. Remember, everything changes. This too shall pass. So make a small dedication. Congratulate yourself that you're taking the time to do this contemplation and take a moment to be spacious and to really look at the foundation. This is the beginning of the path. To really understand impermanence makes all the other teachings on the path possible in so many ways. So may everything you do, every moment of peace you experience, may others receive the blessing of that as well. For all sentient beings, because we all want happiness and we all don't want to suffer. All right. Take care. See you soon.